if you're going to build an ADU, whether you're an owner builder finding subs or you're getting a GC, general contractor, you need to vet a lot of different people to get multiple bids to make sure you're working with the right people. And it's not obvious what you should be looking for, what you should be asking. So we brought on an expert who's vetted hundreds of contractors, and Matt is going to tell us all about what you should be looking for and what are the red flags you should watch out for when you're vetting contractors. Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Working for Realm for about 6 months, but have experience in the construction industry for about 5 years at various different companies, both personal and professionally. So I'm the senior manager of our vendor operations team and responsible for bringing on all of the contractors that we refer to our clients. So vetting them, onboarding them, getting them ready for projects for our clients.
What's that job like? You just like check the Yelp reviews and you phone it in, or
That's step one or point five, see if they have an online presence. But there's a lot more that goes into it. If you want to ensure that the contractor that you're hiring is going to be, one that does a great job. And there's so many different ways to quantify the quality that they do. We have a five kind of step approach that are very encompassing and have a lot of different steps that are involved with each one of them. There are contractors out there that are really good with advertising themselves. So they might have an awesome website, awesome online reviews, but then there's also contractors that have nothing. And there's contractors who have been doing a fantastic job that are only referral based, who, do really good work, but they don't have a website. So you start there, you start and see what you can find online, taking a look at their website, trying to understand if the projects that they're showing on their website and their gallery are stock photos. You got to watch out for that. That happens a lot. Looking at CSLB is another thing. If you're in California, for example, looking at the state license board, making sure that they're licensed, if they have workers' comp, bonded, insured. That's really step one to kind of make a determination on whether or not you want to move forward to the next step.
okay. And at the risk of being a little bit boring, like nitty gritty, I go to CSLB dot what
Yep.
is it? I'll put the link in the description. But you go to the website that the state runs.
Every state in, the US has a state license board. You type in their license number, so that's the first thing you could ask for a contractor to kind of do your own research. And then you see if they have an active license. Do they have any suspensions? Do they have workers' comp? Are they bonded and insured?
Some of the people watching the channel are trying to own or build, and they're going to be looking for subcontractors a lot of the time. Does
Yep.
this advice apply to subcontractors too?
Yeah, so you can actually look up subcontractors based on trades. So if you're looking for an electrician or a plumber,
And then you mentioned like workers' comp and insurance. Is this on the same website? Can you talk
it
about that?
depends on the state. So some states have all of it. Some states just have workers' comp, and you have to request the insurance. California, for example, they might not have the insurance on the state board. You might have to request that directly. In Washington, for example, they would have that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then sometimes somebody's going to be talking to the client and they're going to give you a license number. And then when you look it up, it's going to have a different name.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good call out. There's a couple ways to look at that. There's something called an RMO, which basically allows a contractor to use a license underneath someone else's license. So, Ryan, if you're a licensed general contractor, and I want to, work underneath you, I need to have your approval for that to use your license. And so I might be listed underneath your license as, an employee. But you want to make sure that when you look up a license number, you recognize the name and the company. And if you don't, I would ask the contractor who this is.
Cool. And then, so sometimes just because you're a general contractor, that's a technical term, means you have a specific kind of building license. But some GCs build houses, build big old buildings.
Yep.
Other GCs are still mostly doing expensive kitchen remodels in like San Francisco, right? So, what kind of insurance should I be looking for, or what kind of things should I be looking for to make sure this GC is prepared for a big ADU project?
Yeah, so most general contractors will have somewhere between $1 and $2 million of general liability coverage.
And it's very common for like regional GCs to have much lower, like
Yeah,
20,000, 50,000, right?
yeah,
I'm not making that up.
yeah. No, that's right.
Yeah. So it's something to be aware of. What are the risks of not doing this step? If somebody gets a GC, and says, "Oh, I'm not licensed, but I'm saving you money." Like, can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of flags that go into hiring an unlicensed GC. The first one is that you're just not covered by anything. So if something does happen, there's no recourse. There's no backing by the state. Everything would fall on the homeowner. So that's number one. Number two is if they're not licensed, they probably don't have the makeup of a crew that would get your project done on time. They might, it could be rare, and you could be finding a really, rare contractor that does good work, but they're just not licensed. But that's a risk that you have to, take into account. So, yeah, I would take a look at that stuff.
Perfect. Okay, just because somebody's licensed doesn't mean they have a great track record of customer service. So what steps do I take next to make sure that it's not just licensed, that they're good and nice to work with?
Yeah, I think that's kind of step two, and maybe even step three. Looking at photos of past work, visiting job sites is the number one way to do it. Sometimes you can't always visit a job site, but you can look at photos, you can look at videos, you can FaceTime them while they're on site, and kind of see what the makeup of their project site looks like. Are they showing you projects in progress? Are they showing you before and after photos? If they just show you photos of completed work, I would ask to see what it looked like before, because they might be, taking those photos from somewhere else, from the internet. There's a lot of photos that are being used multiple times from different contractors.
I'll put up the picture of that Propel ADU in Portland. It's like on literally every ADU website. It's like, if you see this ADU and you're not shopping from this one specific builder, this one specific designer, this is a stolen picture. It's the most popular ADU picture on the internet. But okay, so you're saying look at current projects, past projects. Is that as easy as, hey, I know we're just interviewing, but can you FaceTime me from a job site? Could I visit a local job site? You just ask.
Yeah, I think most contractors, if they're proud of their work, they want to show it off, and I think that's a good sign. So, if they're hesitant to refer you to past clients or show you projects that they're currently working on, I would take that as a red flag.
Okay. And then when you're visiting a job site, a lot of people, it's the first time they're visiting a job site. What should they be looking for?
I think the first thing to look at is there debris everywhere? Like, are they keeping a good, clean job site? Because that shows that they care. It shows that they're taking the extra step to ensure that the quality is going to be high quality. So I think that's the first step when you go on site. And then depending on what the current status of the project is, are there multiple people working? Is the job site kind of dead? I think those are kind of the first two to look at if you have an untrained construction eye. If they're in the finishing stages where they're putting up tile or they're putting up the trim around the door, the casing, I would take a close look at are the grout lines consistent? Are things looking straight? Are they looking clean with the way that they've installed it? So it takes a little bit of a trained eye to look at that stuff.
Yeah. This is an interesting one because like a lot of the advice you're giving is this is free, this is gold. Everybody should be very appreciative of the advice in this video because you could do it on your own. This one I would say like the more you do it and the more you see projects end to end, the more you're gonna catch. Sure. Not that you need to be like hunting for clues, but cleanliness is very easy to inspect for. Yeah. But there's other little things that are a little harder to understand what's going on if you're new to it. In the video description below, you can go and book a free call with Realm, and what they do is they'll do free estimates and stuff for your geography, for your specific project. And if you want, you can put a deposit in called a Get It Done deposit, and they'll actually get you hooked up with 3 vetted builders where Matt's already done all this work on the vendor, and you get 3 bids. If you use one of those builders, that you get your money back. It's just a deposit. If you don't, then you've spent a few $100s getting 3 extra quotes and saving yourself a lot of time. So it's a really interesting offer. They're sponsoring this video, and this is a good example of one of those places where honestly you get a lot of value out of somebody like Matt visiting a job site for you rather than you doing it kind of clean, if I'm honest. But still good advice. Because, hey, if nothing else, getting a FaceTime from a job site proves that they have a job going,
Yeah.
which doesn't hurt either, right? All right, so what else should we be doing to vet our builders?
I would speak to some past clients of projects that are relevant to the project that you're considering using that contractor for. So, talking to someone if you're considering doing a kitchen who also did a kitchen with that contractor. How did it go? Asking questions about, what was their timeline? Did they stick to it? Did they, send you change orders after they signed the contract with you? Were they there most days? Were they there consistently? Just try to pick their brain on how the project went, and try to make a determination on whether you think that sounds right or not. And their contractors, one other thing to think about when you ask for references is they're probably going to give you references of projects that went well, right? So there's a little bit of digging that goes into talking to contractor or clients that they haven't given you. And there's ways that we do that at Realm. It does take a little while to figure out, how to get in front of those clients to get a true, perspective of how a project went, an unbiased perspective that is. So we do that at Realm. There's ways that you can do it online. You can, try to find Yelp profiles, maybe negative ones, or just, any that they haven't referred you to, and, see if you can send them a DM or, reach out to them directly, see if they're willing to chat with you any further.
Some of the questions you're asking are like, hey, what were the change orders on your project? And they're like, it's normal to expect some change orders.
Yeah.
So what are the what are the answers that should raise your hackles or
I would be looking for significant change orders that, probably could have been discussed, or assumed they were going to happen when the contract was signed. Let's say you're doing an addition or something, and the foundation is compromised, but you could have known that before the contract was signed, and then you get hit with a significant change order that could be half the cost of the total project once the contract is signed. That would be a red flag to me.
yeah.
Change orders where you open up walls and there's a little bit of dry rot, or there's some old electrical wiring that needs to be upgraded. Those could be significant too, but the contractor doesn't have X-ray vision, right? They're not going to know that. They can assume it and let you know about it. I think it's just the way that the contract is created, and then the way that the contractor kind of assumes what's going to happen. Maybe tells you up front, hey, I'm not going to include this in my contract, but I have a feeling this is going to happen. How do you want to handle this?
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot too because of the lumber prices that happened a year or two ago at the beginning of the pandemic. Those are the projects that people are starting to present now. And so you do see some variation. And you're right. A lot of the time it's about how that was communicated or structured ahead of time.
Yeah.
That matters. Because if the homeowner feels like, well, I went over budget or it took a little bit longer, one of those two is very common, right? It's either one or the other a lot of the time. But I knew that was a possibility. Like I had a range in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then that's like probably a good sign. Whereas if they're like, it kept going over, but again, you're never going to get that referral. But if you find out they kept going over budget or they kept delaying unexpectedly, that stinks. Okay.
Yeah, and I like to ask, what was the contractor, was the contractor there often? Because a lot of these general contractors, they have a crew or a supervisor that, runs a project. But when you're, in the sales process, you're talking to this contractor who you're considering going with, you're usually talking to the owner or the general contractor. But then once it comes time for the actual construction, are they present? Are they keeping an eye on things? Those are the kinds of questions that I like to ask to determine whether a contractor is caring about your project.
That's a good segue. So like different builders build their teams differently, right? Yeah. And so just because you're a general contractor doesn't mean you're swinging the hammer yourself anymore. Could you talk about some of the different ways that people structure their teams and how that might affect your project?
Yeah. So for let's say like an ADU, you're probably not going to have everybody in-house, unless it's a...
What's that mean?
In-house, underneath the umbrella of the, on the payroll, really. So contractors will pull in different subcontractors based on, the project that they need that trade for. So if you're an ADU contractor and you're doing a lot of, stick build, you're building a lot of new, framed houses, ADUs, you'll probably have a framer in-house. You'll probably have a project manager or a supervisor who's going to run the day-to-day. You might have someone who does electrical and plumbing, but sometimes, a contractor will, just bring in a licensed plumber, a licensed electrician who does this all the time. You might have a tile sub that's in-house. Subs are, really expensive sometimes because they can request a lot of money for the quality of the work that they do. If you're finding someone who does cheap quality work for tile, that's a red flag, because it's what you're going to be looking at for the rest of the time that you have that house. So whether or not they have everyone in house on their payroll, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But I would like to ask a contractor, are you going to be bringing these people in? Who do you have who's currently on staff, and how long have you worked with them?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great question to ask, honestly, just to show how their business works a little bit better
Yep.
too. Where
Yep.
as a homeowner, you understand, hey, what's the team going to be like? How many of them are full-time employees versus subs that you bring in for specific trades, and do you have any of those subs that are working on your projects pretty much year round? You call them, they drop everything and come over.
Right.
And it's a really good distinction because it sets your expectations. It also lets the builder know, like, you know how it works a little bit. Yeah, I dig it. And then what about the number of projects that a builder's taken on at any given time? Do you have any advice about asking about that?
Yeah, it really depends on the contractor that you're, looking at. Some contractors have 10, 15 projects going on at once. Some are a small business where the contractor is actually wearing their tools, the general contractor is wearing their tools, and they might have two or three. So there's no right answer for the number of projects. I would just like to see that they're doing and completing projects, on a regular basis. When you look at the number of projects they have, I would also ask, when did those start and when are they expected to finish? Because maybe the contractor who has 20 projects, they started most of those a long time ago and they've never finished. Maybe the one that has two or three has just completed two to three, and they're able to finalize those projects quickly. So looking at the number is a good indicator of the number of projects that they're familiar with and are currently open, but it's not necessarily the end all be all of terms of quality and what they're capable of doing as a contractor.
Yeah. And if people hear that, okay, there's like builders who are wearing the bags, doing it all themselves. There's builders who are subbing out completely and like doing 15 projects at once.
Yeah.
I think the natural instinct is to be like, one of those ends is cheaper, and then the second example costs more. Is that, as a rule, true, or do you have any advice about where people should self-select on that spectrum?
Yeah, I think in my experience, the ones that are doing a lot of projects are the ones that are bringing in subcontractors to kind of run the show. So they might be the general contractor on the license, but they might be bringing in entire crews underneath them to handle those individual projects. And so the quality can kind of range a lot depending on which crew you get. So the price might be cheaper. They might be doing a lot of volume.
Sounds like it's sometimes on one of those business models, it's a less consistent product.
Yes. Yeah.
And so always be weighing that and using these vetting questions to suss it out, right?
Right.
Like if a person says that they're doing 15 projects right now, ADU projects specifically, and then they tell you that everybody's in-house, you kind of expect to see a big old staff. Like that's a lot. That's a lot of houses. Whereas if somebody says 15 and it's mostly subs, that's more realistic. You're like, okay, like, are you using the same subs on every project, or do you kind of vary it a lot? And it'll kind of tease out what Matt's talking about, I think. On the other hand, if they're doing 2 or 3 projects, you fully expect them to say like, well, yeah, I do almost everything. Like myself, I have a full-time framer, and I got some subs for electrical and plumbing to come in and knock it out.
Yeah, I like the way that I really value and look at the quality of contractors is the tile work. I think is a big one because that
Yeah.
indicates, did you get all the planning right at the beginning? And when it didn't look like a bathroom or a kitchen, um, did you lay things out so that the final product when the tiler comes in is going to look really nice?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's an important piece that, people don't pay attention, until the product starts to look like a finished product. And that's where the trained eye kind of comes in with the layout, with the location of where you're putting your studs, the location of where you're, laying out your shower pan, the location of the light fixture junction boxes. Those are all things that if you don't get that right in the beginning, you're gonna have some funky looking stuff at the end, and it's gonna be expensive to fix, or you're gonna have to live with it. That's the problem.
Yeah, I can tell you're a bathroom guy. Well, I'm not going to say where he worked before Realm, but you can look up his LinkedIn maybe. I think that's all true. It's absolutely true. And my dad always jokes, you spend a lot of time sitting on the toilet, and you're going to stare at your bathroom finishes. So
Yeah.
always make sure the bathroom finishes are perfect. 'Cause
Yep. Yep.
it's what you see when you.
Yeah. You spend a
I
lot of
love
time in
it. I
there.
love it. All right. Cool. And what else? What else should we be doing when we're vetting builders, other than looking at their tile costs, Matt?
I think pricing, is an obvious one. Are they too cheap? Are they too expensive?
What's that mean? What's too cheap? How can something be too
Yeah,
cheap, Matt?
you get what you pay for, you know? So you pick the lowest contractor. The timeline probably is going to extend. You're probably going to see some change orders. I would be really cautious about a low priced bid, because there are contractors unfortunately out there that will underprice the project, sign the project, and then in day one you're getting a change order for a lot of money. So always be careful with the lowest price contractor. You want to stick to a budget, but a lot of times when you pick the lowest contractor, whoever you are also considering who might have been higher and better quality, the lower contractor might meet that price or even exceed it, with corrective work that you have to figure out.
Yeah.
So,
So,
um,
and just so people know what a low price is, this is another good time to plug in the description below. You go put in your address at Realm, and it'll give you an estimate based on the size of your project and what you're planning on doing. And I would say, like, if you're getting bids and they're coming in, 10% lower than the bottom end of the range, that's, yeah, it's
that's fine.
possible.
Yeah,
It's possible.
yeah,
And if they're coming in 30% below, it's like, well, yeah. The deeper the discount gets from the average, the more suspicious I get that the process will be really flawless, right?
yeah, yeah.
But anyway, you could get that estimate for free. Doesn't hurt, and then you don't have to do the paid stuff we talked about unless you're interested in getting those vetted builders to bid on your project. What else should we be doing?
Kind of what you're talking to there. We have about 150 active contractors in our network. We've talked to probably 300 of them, at Realm. So we have a really good idea of, not only what the national kind of prices are, but what the local prices are. But I would recommend that everybody gets at least three bids. That's what we do at Realm, so that you can, look at, these are the contractors that we've brought on. These are the contractors that look good to us. But let's see where their pricing falls. So I'd always recommend getting multiple bids, and then you can compare them. So that's kind of an obvious one. And then, just looking at the way that the structure of the payments is also, set up in the contract. Um, you can learn a lot about a contractor by looking at, are they front loading this contract? Where is there a ton of money that I owe at the beginning of the project? I would be hesitant to sign with that contractor, because I don't know if they're going to be involved enough, or you know influenced enough to finish that project when I've already paid them so much up front. So you want to look at, what does the payment structure look like? What's the percentage? Let's say, for the first, up until rough inspection, I'm gonna pay, between 20 and 30%. I think that's a good place to be, 20 to 40% maybe. And then there's enough there for the rest of the project. When you start closing up the walls, you're putting the drywall, you're installing fixtures, you're doing the tile. Tile's expensive, so you want to make sure you have some of that money remaining to find a good tile contractor who's not going to skimp out at the end, because you're ultimately going to only see the stuff at the end, but you want to make sure that the stuff that they installed at the beginning is correct, so that the final product is something that's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot about how to vet contractors, and I think I want to. There's a lot of contractors who watch the channel. I want to do a public service announcement.
Yeah.
Uh, how? Why is it that we have to work so hard on vetting? In your experience, are there just like evil contractors out there, or are there well-meaning contractors that somehow end up mispricing themselves, or both?
Well, unfortunately, I think there are both. I've dealt with a couple that are, not well intentioned. There are some scammers out there. It's difficult to get your GC license, but it's not impossible. And a lot of contractors kind of hide behind the fact that they're licensed, but other than that, they're really not too legit. So that's one side of things. You obviously want to, be careful of that. But there's also a lot of really genuine contractors who do really great work, but might be a little bit over the tips of their skis. They might be a little bit, overwhelmed. Their eyes got a little bit big. They've taken on too much work, and it's not always the case that it's their fault. Projects get delayed, materials get delayed. Scheduling for contractors is really challenging. So I don't want to blame contractors for that happening, but there are some that kind of take advantage of clients because there's so little information or education in the construction space for the homeowner. And that's sort of why Realm exists, right? We work with clients and homeowners to kind of educate them, and that's something that I think really most of America should be doing. Know more about their home so they can make informed decisions. It's just there's been this stigma around blue collar work and going to college, is the way that everybody is taught to go, but there's so much knowledge and so many important things that you need to learn that you won't learn in a classroom.
That's it.
Yeah, and if there's any contractors that are watching this, hopefully we can drop a link in the description to sign up. Would love to meet you.
I always, I love when people are trying to learn on their own, especially if you're going to do multiple projects. It pays to go and learn how to have these conversations with builders and kind of talk about the real costs of like material and how that's getting built into your agreement and stuff like that. If you're a one-timer and you're like, this sounds pretty intimidating, then there's an immense value to hiring a company like Realm. If you want to hire Realm, link in the description below. If you want to learn more about contractor agreements, check out this video. And if you want to hear from some homeowners who actually went through the process, got 3 bids, and like where all the different kinds of experiences they had with just those 3 builder choices, check out this video. Yeah, let's build some housing.
Sounds good.